So, thank you very much, and in order of appearance to Blake Moret, Chief Executive Officer of Rockwell Automation. Hello, good afternoon, Mr. Moret. And thank you very much. I don't think Professor Stiglitz needs much presentation, but Nobel Prize and Professor Joseph Stiglitz, thank you very much to you too. And thank you very much also to Professor Luciano Floridi, who teaches philosophy and ethics of information at the University of Oxford e anche a Bologna. Buonasera, Floridi. So, Mr. Moret, I know you haven't got much time, so I'll go straight forward to the first question to you. I told you, and I said before, we're trying to face the structural elements that will be left from this COVID crisis. This crisis was not born as an economical or financial crisis, so it's very different from 2008, and also for what I've studied, obviously, from 1929 crisis. This crisis was determined by a sanitary issue, a virus issue, but obviously had an impact on the economies and on the political system. Apart from the crisis, the structural element that you think will be left in the next years, and more specifically, what role do you think the connected enterprise can play in the next future after the crisis, obviously? Thank you.
Well, thank you, and I'm very happy to have the opportunity to be with you today. Let me start on an optimistic note. I think that we are in the early stage or entering the early stage of what will be a period of sustained economic expansion. Countries are moving at different speeds, but I think the outlook is positive. I think certain structural elements that were in place and of concern before the pandemic are thrown into even sharper focus as we emerge. And those are resilience, agility, and sustainability. And from our perspective, when we think about the role of technology and expertise with respect to production, resilience involves greater use of remote technologies, remote operations, stimulating processes where people cannot physically be in the same place. It involves cybersecurity, making us more resilient against attacks. From an agility standpoint, it's packaging flexibility, most related to this topic and this audience, a flexibility in manufacturing machinery and in processes and in plants. That flexibility, more versatile factories, if you will, is going to be a hallmark, I think, of the future. Being able to pivot quickly to different buying behaviors, different needs, as we saw during the pandemic, the requirements to move quickly and to retrofit, in some cases, entire plants to produce what was most needed. And then finally, sustainability, and with a focus on energy, water, and waste.
So, as far as I understood, flexibility is one of the key words you were underlining as first reaction for the next future. Now, which role do you think digital and automation can play in the sustainability of the tissues industry, and so environmentally wise, but not only environmentally wise?
Well, I think the elements of sustainability that I mentioned, energy, water, and waste, are all very applicable to the tissue industry. It's being able to be the best stewards, the best users of the energy inputs, and to be able to make most efficient use through the technology, being able to use analytics to identify the biggest opportunities for improving that efficiency, to reduce reduce downtime through preventative maintenance, predictive maintenance, and to be able to increase the overall reliability of the equipment. In a tissue making operation, as you know, during failures of pieces of equipment or when the process is not running well and there's waste, that is what we're trying to minimize to create the most sustainable type of operation. In Rockwell's own operations, we've made commitments to being carbon neutral in our Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions within 10 years by 2030. And we think that it's important for enterprises to have that target and also to carefully assess the targets of our own supply chains, to be able to look upstream because it's an ecosystem that we operate in. And so that overall ecosystem and their commitment to creating a more sustainable future, I think, is particularly important in this industry.
Because you were quoting, I mean, the importance of data, analytics, and what else. But, I mean, using data, implementing the digital power of our enterprises, I think rises up another issue that is the cybersecurity. Now, cybersecurity was an issue before the COVID, mainly for big companies and for the governments. We know very well what happened between Russia and the States, or the States and China. Now, do you think that with the explosion of data and the digitalization of the economy, cybersecurity will become an issue and eventually a problem also for medium-sized or normal companies, not only multinational and strategic ones?
No question. When we look at the number of attacks, attempts, tests of the vulnerabilities or the resilience of companies, it's an equal opportunity threat throughout big companies, small companies, companies in manufacturing, companies in IT. No one is being spared. And the challenges for we who are in industrial processes are unique because you have all of the challenges of the office environment, the IT systems and end devices, but then you have a special set of threats affecting our operations, tissue machines, other supporting equipment, converting, and so on. And so there's a different set of challenges there. We support a defense in depth approach that begins by assessing the resilience of end devices, looking at the networks, making sure that proper segmentation is used. Importantly, protecting the data, making sure that the data is being used only with the user's consent and for furthering principles, furthering objectives that the user supports. And that's very difficult. It requires a thoughtful assessment of what software is being used in the operations, who has access. Insider risk is an important element of this through user authentication. And so it's through that defense in depth approach that we can be the most resilient target. But this will never be done. This is an issue today. It'll be an issue tomorrow and for the future.
Well, that's very significant, especially the last issue you were rising up. Thank you very much, Mr. Moret. I know you have to leave us because you had other commitments. And before